Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of my Bridge Officer video series looking at the pilot powers. Now, just a reminder that if you haven't seen episode 1 called Core Fundamentals yet, you should probably do so before watching any of the remaining episodes to give you a bit of a better understanding of things I talk about like damage categories and hull resist and the ship characteristics overall. Now, I just want to make a quick correction to an oversight in episode 2, Tactical Powers, where I said attack pattern Delta has a 15-second global. It does when running other attack patterns apart from Delta, but Delta's normal global is 30 seconds. So thank you for the gurus in the Stow Builds subreddit for picking up on that one. And finally, before I begin, a very special thank you to SOB at SpencerB96 who assisted me filming this episode, and also providing me with a great number of laughs showing just how bad a pilot he really is when he needs sleep. I might even put a small little montage together at the end of this video, but damn, it was entertaining. Now also, don't pay too much attention to my pilot ship build that you will see here. It was thrown together to show off a certain pilot power, and it's far from a build recommendation that should be used. So a bit of a disclaimer there. So let's begin. The pilot powers are a specialization class of bridge officer abilities. Only certain ships are capable of using them, and your bridge officer needs the specialization training for pilot to get access to them. The ships that generally have these abilities are faster moving escorts, but this isn't always true. And like any set of bridge officer abilities, pilot powers can increase your capabilities and survivability, as well as impacting your foe's capability and survivability. However, some powers in this set are much more useful than others, as you will soon see. So let's start with Clean Getaway. Clean Getaway was designed to be used when you want to haul ass out of a battle, and whether you're in PvE or PvP, it does have some interesting effects, so you are able to achieve this. Firstly, if it will only impact targets in your rear 90-degree arc and only within 5 kilometers. The degree of arc is a bit restrictive in my opinion, and you would need some skill to use it, particularly in PvP. On a successful activation of this, you will placate your target by what my tooltip says of 9.6 seconds at rank 3. Again, now this is misleading, as it does not take your target's control expertise into account, and in many cases will be a lot shorter than what the tooltip said. In this first example, my intelligence specialization tree cleared the placate immediately, but in the second example, the placate was cleared in 4 seconds or thereabouts, and my control expertise skill was resisting some Spencers there, obviously. The other thing of note on the tooltip is that it says this placate is fragile. Now what this means is that if you continue to shoot at the target after you activate Clean Getaway, the placate will break, okay? And by the fact that they put fragile in there, it probably breaks pretty easily. So this ability is best used when you stop firing when you're trying to get away. The other benefit of that is that you'll get out of red alert quicker. For ships who can't cloak while they're in red alert, that's a bit of an advantage. And you can activate full impulse when you're out of red alert as well. The other effect of Clean Getaway is the speed buff to yourself of 400% if you're the caster, and 75% reduction if you have it cast on you. Again, both of these are rank 3 stats. Attack Pattern Omega and Pilot Team will cleanse the speed debuff off you, as well as any mass debuff cleansers like Rally Point Marker from the command powers, as an example. Overall, this ability has a very specific use and may be good in certain type of builds or team arrangements. It is good that it does start at the lower rank of Lieutenant. I'm not aware of any duty officers that are worthy to slot that impact this power. Now, Coolant Ignition. Coolant Ignition is like Eject Warp Plasma from the engineering set of powers, but has some very distinct differences. Eject Warp Plasma applies its movement, debuff, and damaging effects simultaneously, where Coolant Ignition does this in 2 separate phases. And because of this, it is much better than Warp Plasma in both the things that it does. The cooldown is 85 seconds and has a 40-second global. You deploy the coolant in a line, or that comes just at the back of your ship, like Eject Warp Plasma does, for a brief period. And the movement debuff only exists within the cooling cloud itself. There is no effect outside of the cooling cloud. It will affect people that you drop it across, and for anyone who flies into it. Now, after 10 seconds, the coolant ignites, ending the movement debuff phase of this ability. The ignition area, though, is much larger or wider than the area of the coolant, so even if the target starts moving again, they will remain within the damage area longer. Focusing on the first stage of the Coolant Ignition process at rank 3, the target will get a minus 99 turn rate and minus 90 flight speed debuff. This debuff is continuously applied while you're within the cooling cloud. Attack Pattern Omega and Pilot Team will cleanse the debuff completely long enough for you to get out. The residual cloud that remains over your ship after you escape doesn't ignite. Hazard emitters will also cleanse the cloud abilities off you continuously so that you can get away. Single debuff cleansers like Rally Point Marker or the Iconian Shield or Keel Eldof won't get you out of the cloud, since it will reapply the movement debuff as soon as those abilities remove it. Also, the actual applied debuff to yourself is determined by your control expertise skill. It doesn't go the other way though, with the debuff percentages increased by your control expertise skill. That's set at each rank of the ability. The reason why this build looks the way it does is because it is heavily spec'd into exotic particle generators, primarily to show off what this ability can do. It did receive a significant boost to damage at the Season 13 patch. And I wanted to stack as many EPG and exotic damage boosters on it because this character normally doesn't do any of that. This is Spencer's standard KDF PvP build with a couple of traits turned off, like ablative shell and that sort of thing. And as you can see, it took care of his 57,000 hull capacity fairly quickly. I did it again, activating all my Cat 2 damage abilities. And it seems to impact him faster. The damage is exotic plasma, and it applies an amount every second the target is within the damage area, and it is 100% shield penetrating. I believe this ability does have good potential in the structured team environment because the damage potential is huge, but you do have to give up your command seat for it. Reroute reserves 2 weapons. Now, to me, this is one of the most disappointing abilities in this specialization. I say this for a couple of reasons, and some will probably disagree with me on this. Firstly, rank 1 starts at Lieutenant Commander. That is a huge thing. It means that rank 2 and rank 3 are both in the Commander seat, so why would you use rank 2? It also means you've got to give up your commander seat. Now, secondly, unlike any other energy weapon bridge officer power, there is no buff to your overall damage, not even a small one, at any rank. Some may argue these points with me on these points because on what it does to the weapons powered subsystem and overall firing cycles and stuff, but I don't think these gains are enough, in my opinion, to actually use this. Although I have been inspired while making this video to give it another try, okay? Particularly because of what they did with cannon firing cycles at the Season 13 patch. So this power affects only two things: your weapons and engines subsystems and your firing cycles. It has a 30-second cooldown and a 15-second global cooldown. The higher the rank you use, the increase in percentage to your firing cycle haste, with 50% being the largest at rank 3. Now think of haste as a fast forward button to your firing cycles. Each of your energy weapons will do exactly what they do in their normal 5-second cycle, but in less and less time depending on how much haste you're running. There are other sources of haste in the game apart from this ability, and they all have an impact. So let's assume we only have the haste provided by rank 3 of Reroute reserves. What will happen to a normal 5-second firing cycle of a dual heavy cannon, for example? Now the formula is actually pretty easy. If you type this into Excel, it will give you the answer. So 5-second cycle. So it equals sign 5 divided by the sum of 1 plus the sum of 60% with the appropriate amount of parentheses. Now the reason why I put a sum before the 60% parentheses, because if you want to add other sources of haste to see what your total firing cycle is going to look like after all those sources, you just have 60% plus 20% plus 10%, whatever, and it will give you the answer. So the answer for that equation is, on a standard dual heavy cannon, is it will now complete its entire firing cycle in 3.13 seconds. So normally over a 10-second period or 2 firing cycles, a dual heavy cannon will shoot off 8 shots, 4 per cycle. With Reroute Reserves 3 active, you will achieve the same in just under 6.3 seconds, which is only 1.3 seconds longer than one standard firing cycle. In fact, in 9.4 seconds, you will shoot off 12 shots from a single dual heavy cannon over 3 firing cycles. The second element of this ability is that it sets your weapon's power drain to 0, but will use more of your engine power the lower the rank of the ability. On speedy escorts, a reduction to the engine power is actually a big thing. It significantly slows you down, and for cruisers who don't really rely so much on speed, they typically don't have access to this ability because it starts at Lieutenant Commander. The 0 drain to weapon subsystems essentially means that all your weapons will fire at their full potential with no damage drop off from that will normally receive during a firing cycle. So see for yourself if this ability is your cup of tea. Like I said before in making this video, it did inspire me to give it another go, but I'm fairly sure I will be putting back on Cannon Rapid Fire 3 after a few tries. Fly Her Apart. Fly Her Apart is a self-damaging speed boost and weapons buff. It has a 40-second cooldown and a 20-second global. Essentially, when you activate it, you will get a 75% speed boost and a further 15% every second for the duration the ability is active, and its duration is 15 seconds. You are also meant to get a 3% category 2 damage buff for each second the ability is active. And that happens, or is meant to happen, for a 10-second duration after the ability ends. But that's not really what I'm seeing. Okay, so theoretically, you're meant to get a 45% Cat 2 damage buff, 3% times 15 seconds, that's what you should get. Not seeing that. What actually happens is that a few seconds after an activation, I got a 13% increase to my tooltip damage, and then a further 13 or just above 13% increase at the end of the ability duration. for a total of just over 20%, 27% increase on my tooltip or final damage. Now, at first, I put this down to category 2 dilution, but quickly realized that the weapon tooltip you can see here is from a very rare dual heavy cannon, protonic polaron, crit D2 weapon. Didn't have any damage modifiers on it, which are final damage multipliers. The fleet combat buff was not active at the time, and the only Cat 2 damage buff that I could find active was Superior Cannon Training, which only gives 7.5% Cat 2. I don't think a 7.5, no, actually, no, I don't think, I'm very sure a 7.5% Cat 2 will not dilute a 45% or a subsequent 45% Cat 2 down to 27%. So either I'm doing something wrong or this ability isn't working correctly. Would love your feedback on that. The fact that it applies a damage in 2 stages against what its own tooltip suggests leads me to believe that this power is not working properly and is bugged. The other important element to fly her apart is the damage it does to you during its duration. It will damage you at 3% of your total hull for 15 seconds. This damage doesn't set off traits like ablative shell, but you can actually heal yourself during it to recover its hull. Now, form up. I can see their thoughts behind this ability, and it's a good idea, but in third-person view of your ship and the speeds of escorts and stuff nowadays, it would take insane amounts of coordination to leverage this ability properly. Furthermore, they've made this ability as well start at Lieutenant Commander at rank 1, further limiting its appeal. Essentially, form up will teleport you to your targeted ally, and then if you stay within 5 kilometers of your ally, it will give you a category 2 damage buff that gets larger for the duration of the ability, up to 40% at the rank 3 power. This effect will end if you move more than 5 kilometers away from the target instantly. The visual effect looks like a tether connecting you and your ally together. Like I said before, for speedy escorts to coordinate this, it would take great skill and communication between 2 pilots. It will be better on slower cruisers, but like I said, there aren't many cruisers that I can think of that will have access to this because of the Lieutenant Commander rank 1 ability, and you'd really want the rank 3. Hold Together. Hold Together is the hazard emit equivalent in the pilot set of powers, but it doesn't rely on Orc's power to boost your heal amount, but rather your throttle level. Also, like hazard emitters, it has a hazard cleanse. The main difference to hazard emitters is the duration, which only lasts for 8 seconds. The ability cooldown is 30 seconds and has a global of 15, which makes it quicker to have again than hazard emitters, which has 45 second cooldown and a 30 second global. Escorts that have pilot abilities should be using Hold Together as part of their set of heals. It's just too good an ability to not have it slotted. Reinforcement Squadron. This is one of the weirder pilot abilities. Firstly, it has a 75 second cooldown and a 40 second global. It will call in a group of pets which has abilities based on the rank of the power that is cast. When they first arrive, they will deploy a small Coolant Ignition to the target, which ignites faster than the bridge officer version, and then for the next 45 seconds they will attack the target and other targets around them. Now weirdly, when Spencer and I use this at exactly the same time, after the Coolant Ignition strike on both of us, the pets just attacked each other and ignored us. I guess we were just sitting there, we weren't drawing any threat, but it was still very interesting to watch, as you can sort of see here. Subspace Boom. This power opens up a kind of rift that will cause an AoE kinetic damage upon activation, and then the area will remain as a flight hazard for the length of the power duration, which will impact your flight speed and turn rate as well as your defense rating. The initial damage is determined by the power rank and also your throttle position, and it can't be activated if your throttle position is below 50%. And I believe this was done on purpose because it wants you to use a bit of piloting skill on where you deploy it. So it stops lazy deploys of it. So I sort of agree with it in that capacity. The movement debuff is cleared by Attack Pattern Omega and Pilot Team, but it doesn't restore the lost defense rating. Hazard emitters will cleanse both. Attack Pattern Lambda. Now, I used to love Lambda. It was such a great cloak sniffer before the Season 13 patch, but they sort of changed the way it worked and also reduced that part of the power quite significantly, leaving you with simply an accuracy buff to yourself and a debuff to your target. It has a 30-second cooldown and a 15-second global, and it can't be used in conjunction with other attack patterns. They are essentially part of the same set of abilities, so activating one attack pattern will put Lambda into global and vice versa. So Lambda will increase your accuracy rating by up to 50 points, and your debuff to your target's accuracy rating by up to 31.25 points at rank 3. The increased perception used to work without firing, which is why it was great for sniffing out cloaked ships. I remember in Reroute, with the rank 3 ability, I could see cloaked ships 14, 15 kilometers away. It's probably why it was nerfed. But you didn't, like I said, you didn't need to fire for that to be, for the perception part to be active. So the perception increase that you get with this ability only benefits you when you're firing at a target who's trying to get away and cloaks. You'll be able to see them for longer after they have cloaked until they get out of your perception range. Deploy countermeasures. This is another power that was scaled back at Season 13. Essentially, deploy countermeasures will make you immune to kinetic damage for up to 8 seconds if rank 3 is used. For any targetable torpedoes and mines within a 3 kilometer radius of your ship, these will be destroyed. And for any foes within that same 3 kilometer radius, you get up to a 50% chance at rank 3 to confuse them and make their team members targets instead of you. It has a 60-second cooldown and a 30-second global cooldown. Now, control expertise used to scale the kinetic immunity duration, but like I said, this was scaled back. 8 seconds of immunity is something that has a 60-second cooldown is a bit short to be effective, in my opinion. If the confused chance was guaranteed or significantly higher, this would compensate a little bit, but they didn't change that part when they nerfed the immunity duration. The fact that it only makes you immune to one damage type is also an issue, considering all the different damage types in the game. Now, I'm not suggesting energy, but there is physical, there's electrical, and there's exotic. So all of these flaws together make this ability a bit of a no for me. There are much better abilities that you can put into a lieutenant commander slot than this. Lock trajectory. This ability is one I wish I could use more, especially against speedy escorts. In my speedy escort, lock trajectory will maintain your directional vector, but allow you to turn around and fire your forward-facing weapons to your side or rear, depending on where you need to shoot at. You have full control of your direction, but you will continue to move in the direction that you were flying at when you activated the power. The cooldown is 30 seconds and has a 15-second global, while the duration of the effect and the speed of the turn is dependent on your rank, up to 12 seconds and 200% turn rate rotation buff at rank 3. This is probably something for more skilled pilots to use, and I also think that this is more suited to a first-person environment rather than the third person. Now, in Star Citizen, this is actually a flight mode that I have disabled most of the time, but in dogfights, I do deactivate it so I can turn around and face that target and then continue off in the direction that I was flying. The other thing I do need to say is that when the duration of a lock trajectory ends, whatever your direction you're facing, you will move in that direction when it ends without any delay in turning that way. You just instantly just start heading in that direction. And finally, pilot team. Pilot team is a buff to your flight speed. It also gives you immunity to movement debuffs. While the flight speed buff is active for the duration of the ability, regardless of the rank, which is 10 seconds, the movement debuff gets shorter the lower the rank you choose, being from 2 up to 6 seconds. Pilot team shares cooldowns with other team powers like TAC and Psi team as well, so you need to keep that in consideration. That's it for my overview of the pilot powers. Thank you so much for watching. The next episode I will look at is the science powers. This is going to be a big one. I'll try and get that out in the coming weeks. Live long and prosper. See you out there.